Woo, the kids are all right. What what a game.
Thumbs
Let's
up.
uh let's get this going. There's a new voice on the show that we haven't heard in a while. Let's get this
Let's
intro
go.
going and get on the road.
Hi, this is Mike Ross, public address announcer for your Toronto Maple Leafs, and this is the Leafs Late Night Podcast, your post-game destination. And now, your starting lineup: Roscoe, the Fanalist, Southey, Biener, and Darty Brodeur on the Leafs Late Night Podcast.
Well, the roster's a little different tonight from what Mr. Ross said there. Welcome, Marty. It's been a while.
Thank you for having me. Because sports are fun, right?
Love having you back on. Yeah. You said you had this whole game ingrained into your head before we got on here, so I should just turn this over to you, eh?
Well, it was a great game. I mean, if for all you listeners out there, late night listeners, I of course have a Sports is Fun podcast, and Biener's been my guest over and over, which I appreciate. And if you listen to the podcast, you'll know that I barely ever get the big TV. Because I talk about this, my kids are always watching YouTube on the TV, and so I'm watching the game on my laptop. But I got the game today because they were out running errands, so I got the big TV. So because of course out here in BC, the game starts at 4, which is perfect for me because usually that's a good time. The kids are, when you have little ones, they're running around, and you can cook dinner while you're watching the second period. So yeah, so I watched the whole thing and nearly had a heart attack.
We're only 5 games into the season. We don't want to be going there yet.
Well, it's Tampa, right? So Tampa, the issue with Tampa is that we all have PTSD, right, from the playoffs, and it's a game we want to win. Like, I felt like the outcome maybe is a step forward towards where we all expect this team to be, which is maybe competing for the President's Trophy, ideally, or the top of the East, right? That's what we want. We want the best possible playoff position, and that'd be the top of the East. And yeah, I felt like they opened the first 3 minutes. Matthews hits a crossbar. I'm like, this game's over. It's already over. But
well, not to mention with the Lightning starting Johansson. The last time Johansson started against the Leafs was that Colorado game in Toronto that Matty got a hat trick.
Yeah, but full credit to him. He didn't look like a rookie goalie or a youth goalie or an AHL goalie. He looked like a pro. So that there's a reason why they didn't pick up a Martin Jones or make a trade when Vasi went down. So, full credit to the Tampa Bay Lightning and that goalie that I thought he was their star, other than Kucherov, of course, and the refs. But other than I thought he was great. He didn't give a ton of space, and he wasn't flailing all over the net.
Yeah, no, compared to some of the games I've seen from Johansson over the years, he's kind of bounced around a little bit. He played pretty solid tonight for what he's done in the past. Like you said, Poppy comes in pretty much right away, has that little breakaway, hits it off the post. It's like, okay, here we go. Things settle down a little bit. We have that bomb from Hedman that he just misses the net. And then shortly after that, Willie opens the scoring. First time all year the Leafs have scored first. So signs were good at that point.
We did win, so... so maybe... yeah. I thought it was going to be a track meet. That's the kind of game it felt like. And then those 2 goals, I mean... We could talk about this in detail, but I think Samsonov, that may be it. That may be it for him as the starter.
I know you said, we talked a little bit beforehand, you said you haven't really been completely caught up on our shows yet this year. We've touched on that a couple times, that Sammy's looking off, and that I think I might agree with you that this might be a good time for him to sit and recoup a little bit. Because, yes, I know it's Kucherov shooting, but the first one, he was a little bit out of position. He probably could have had that. And I know, like, okay, the Barre Boulet goal, he didn't really stand a chance. Beautiful pass, nice tip out front. Like, any goaltender would be expecting Kucherov to shoot from there.
The first two
And
goals
then,
were really high danger. Like, not a
oh
ton
yeah,
of goalies could stop those, but you're up 1-0, getting one save, then it's a 1-1 game instead of 2-1. You're right. But yeah, I think, well, you play goals, so you know that if a goalie's kind of playing bad, the team gets frazzled because they're like, okay, well, our whole game play changes because we're not sure what our goalie's going to do tonight. And then,
when there's, oh, go ahead, keep going.
well, when Woll came in, he made those quick saves, and then the team started to play better. And sure enough, they finished the first 3-1 instead of 4-1, right? Because there was a shot that Woll saved early, where it could have easily been 4-1, but it wasn't, and then the team settled down a little bit.
You always hear a lot of people talking, like, it's not necessarily how many saves you make, it's when you make them.
Totally.
Like, out in Edmonton, they're a perfect example back in the heyday of the Oilers. Like, Grant Fuhr was an amazing goalie. I'm not trying to take anything away from him, but he didn't have the greatest goals against average in the world. I know it was the 80s, but he didn't stop all of them. He just made the stops when he needed to make them. Like, Sammy letting those three in succession like that, like, that's just killer. If you even stop one of them, it helps your team think, okay, you know what? He had a slow start. Let's get back into this. We can do this. But allowing them quickly, that quickly right away, within a 6-minute span, it's 3-1 instead of 1-0.
Yeah, goaltending controversies are, Toronto's famous for them. They've only really developed kind of one goalie that was successful. And I mean, you could argue that Potvin wasn't even that successful. There is an argument for that. Because did he have more than one really good season? I guess he had 2 or 3, but I would say that Samsonov, this is all anybody's going to talk about now. And the pressure will get to him and the team. And I mean, the movie, we've seen this movie over and over and over with Reimer and who was Gustafson there in that mix, and who else was in the mix with Reimer?
The monster.
And then Bernier. I mean, that was the other guy in the mix. And I've seen this movie a million times, and it always ends the same way, like the Cujo thing versus Belfour versus Potvin. Potvin ran out of town. We ran him out of town, and then we ran Cujo out of town, and then Belfour kind of like gracefully retired, or he didn't retire, but he finished 2006, and he wasn't very good. But anyway, he wasn't the problem in 06. All I'm trying to say is, I'd be totally fine with Samsonov going on LTIR right now, because he's had an injury, so why not just make it official? Bring up Martin Jones, and let's run that for a while. Because Jones, nobody maybe will agree with me, but Martin Jones in preseason looked actually pretty good. I thought he was like, he's bigger than I thought he was, and he was making some saves. I've never really been super confident in Samsonov. I like him, though. As a person, he's hilarious. He got us past Tampa, I guess, in round 1. But, yeah, I mean, here we are, right? Here we are.
Yeah, like, not to get, like, me, we could talk goalies all night and skip everything else.
Let's not get too granular on goalies, but like Woll is the kind of goalie that's really quiet. He reminds me of, I hate to say this, but he reminds me of Belfour. Belfour was a really quiet goalie. Played kind of that stand-up style with a butterfly, and I think Woll plays like that.
Until you got in his crease.
Yeah, and then he beat you over the head with a stick. But yeah, so, Samsonov is more of a, what would you call it, like a reflex goalie, or
so the best example in my mind of a reactionary goalie or reflex goalie would be like Cujo, right?
Yep.
Like, not that Cujo was ever out of position, but he was so ridiculously athletic.
Yeah.
He was super aggressive on the challenges, and he was able to make those crazy athletic saves coming back over. So that's kind of sort of with Samsonov, except Samsonov pure butterfly. Whereas Cujo was kind of like that hybrid, because we had a handful of those hybrids coming around the same time. Like, we had Broder, we had Cujo. I won't even get started on Hasek. Like there was these crazy odd style goalies of that era. So
Patrick Waugh,
it's
technically Waugh was a butterfly, right?
oh yeah, he was almost entirely butterfly. A lot of people say he perfected it. But yeah, no, I completely agree with you. Wall has that calming presence about him, and you could see that tonight. Like you mentioned, really shortly after he came in, there was a dangerous chance that looked kind of like the puck was kind of fluttering around there. He stopped that. He made quite a few really big saves to kind of settle everything down and show the Leafs, like, look, I'm here. I got this. Just do your thing.
Yeah, when we went, like, I mean, we're skipping forward, but which is what Steph always does. So shout out, Steph.
We love you, Steph.
In the second, when they got down on the 5-on-3, I mean, the team. I mean, I just tweeted this earlier, but when Gio blocks the shot, the team sees that and they turn it around. I think that's when the rally starts. Is when Gio blocks that shot early in the second, and then Wall makes some saves. They kill off those 2 penalties, and then the tables turn, and then they. I mean, of course, the rest is history, as we say. But I think that, like, for me, I don't see a path forward with Samsonov as the starter. I think that the team. I listened to a ton of podcasts. I think that Merrick and Friedman and Myrtle and Siegel, everybody was kind of saying the same thing. Wall's going to be the starter at the end of the season. It's just a matter of, it's not if, it's when. And I mean, I didn't want to believe that. I wanted to let's give Samsonov a shot at least. But now I kind of see what everybody's been talking about. He gets injured and then he can't play. So he's got some kind of shoulder injury and he can't play, right? So,
well, realistically, this was kind of the plan, right? When Dubas signed the last offseason, when he signed Murray and Samsonov as like a stopgap, because he had Wall coming up, and this guy's been high on the Leafs prospect list for a long time. He just had that injury problems. And then they drafted Peksa, they drafted Akhtiamov, they drafted Hildeby. So we have these young goalies coming up through the system as well. So they needed like a stopgap. And then Sammy was a pleasant surprise last year, especially considering how negative the Murray trial went out. But yeah, it's a stopgap. Wall's definitely looking like he's that guy, and I think it's probably the best way this could happen for a blowout like that to happen. Wall came in, give him the start next game, and let's go from there. Let's see if we can build on this momentum. And at best case scenario, let Sammy heal up or fix whatever he has to fix, and we can have a 1A, 1B again.
Totally. And yeah, maybe I'm overreacting, and maybe, you play Wall in, who do we play on Monday or Tuesday? I don't even know. You tell me.
Should be Washington.
Okay, so we play Washington. Well, maybe we give, it's hard not to give Samsonov that start, right? But maybe we go into Washington with Wall, win, and then he gets a couple wins, and then he loses, and then he plays Samsonov when he loses. Maybe that's what the move is right now, or I don't know if there's any. I think I looked at the schedule and there's no back-to-backs in November, so it's kind of
no. We do have that trip over to Europe though,
right? Early in November, yeah. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to see what the move is right now. I think I'm still a little bit emotionally tied to Wall and because that's save on Kucherov with like seconds to go. I don't know if we get that from Samsonov, even if he's healthy and confident. So, dare I say,
this year
the
we
end of
definitely don't.
Yeah,
yeah. This year we definitely don't. Last year, there's a good chance, except it would look a little differently because of the stylistic differences that we were touching on. Quickly, while we can go back and summarize up the first period, the goal from Willie. Now, I don't know about you, but that has been like basically summarizing how Willie's been playing up to this point in the season. I know it's early. I've been stressing that on every episode so far. It's still early. We can't take too much of the positives or too much of the negatives right now. But Willie with crazy possession in the zone, going up to the point, losing the defender by cutting back in, over to JT in the bumper, and then he does a nice little play through Nyes back over to Willie to bury it. Now that, all the criticism against Willie last year in the playoffs, like, oh, he's he's too soft, he won't go in the corner, he just gets it and gets rid of it. Like, that's not how he is. Yes, there's some very bad videos of him, quote unquote, giving up on plays, but he's a gamer, man.
He made like there's so many highlight reel moves. There was one where he enters the zone and he burns a guy. Just a great tiny little play. Didn't get the chance because it got broken up, but just how he entered the zone was like this. He's playing with extreme confidence right now, and it's not out of the realm of possibility that he could get to 50. I think him and Matthews, both of them are playing with extreme confidence. Matthews isn't burying right now after scoring 6 early, but yeah, Willie just looks uber confident, and I just see that he's just going to continue to dominate if he keeps playing like he is even tonight. But yeah, he's insane. It's insane. It's great.
Oh, it is. I love seeing it. 2 minutes after the Willie goal, Cooch ties it up. Blast from the top of the circle, if I remember correctly.
On the power play, which, by the way,
Yep.
Brutal call.
Power play goal. I get the call. They've got to call the head contact, but Nyes wasn't intentionally going for that. He didn't pull his arms up enough when he was, skated in too close to Sergachev, didn't pull his arms up enough, going by and clipped Sergachev in the head.
It's a first period penalty call to me. 100%. That's what that was.
Yep.
It was a first. It wouldn't have been called in with 10 minutes left in the game, and there was a high stick on Nyes with 10 minutes to go, and it wasn't called. So there you go. I guess my theory is correct.
Just under 4 minutes later, we have the Barry Boulet tip in front. Now, we briefly touched on this when we were breaking down the goals a little bit earlier. Kucherov, over on the same circle that he just scored from, gets the puck, looks like he's going to shoot, and just beautiful pass to Barry Boulet right out front with the tip in right in between the 5-hole and Samsonov the same. He's trying to slide over. I don't fault him on that one. Very few goalies are going to make that save because they're expecting it to go far side, not right in the center, or they're just playing out expecting a shot from Kucherov.
I thought the first goal was like a 50-50. An elite goalie maybe would have had a piece of it. And the second goal, I was like, no, you're not many goalies could stop that one. Sorry. I didn't fault him.
Exactly.
I didn't fault him. I kind of faulted the defense there. I think the defense in the first period the first 10 minutes were pretty scattered. Cooper out-coached Keefe in the first period by a landslide. But what are you going to do? The third goal, what did you think? What did you think of that penalty? The third goal, because that was on a power play as well, was it? Was it not? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, that was Jake McCabe hooking Cirelli. So it's yet again, it's early in the season. I don't want to harp on the refs too much right now, but not even just the Leaf games. There's a ton of penalties right now.
Yeah,
like they are calling everything super tight. So potentially that's really good for goal totals in the leagues. I know a lot of people like seeing a lot of goals, but we got to get these players used to this standard, so it's going to take a little while. But that goal, I know it's a bomb, a one-timer, Kucherov, top of the circle, same spot as he was in the previous 2 goals. But if you look at how delayed Sammy was, like Sammy was on Mountain Time and Kucherov was on Eastern Time. Like he was
he should have had. That's the one he should have had. That's the one he should have had, in my opinion, of the 3.
Yeah.
But again, like, you kind of like the second goal, I put it all on defense. I'm like, well, that was a coverage issue. So let's say he makes the save on one of the first 2, and then the defense doesn't screw up the play and lose coverage. Then it's tied 1-1, right? So, but the game goes completely different if they don't. I mean, I'm a firm believer with sports or in life. You have to lose to win. Like, you have to know where your weaknesses are so that you can fix it. So, and I thought that the second period they came out really strong. What was your opinion? What was your kind of opinion or take when we restarted in the second?
No, you could tell. to start the second, they kind of it looked like a completely different team, because in the first, like you said, whether it was out coaching, whether it was they weren't ready, everybody was spent too much time in the sun down in Florida for the weekend.
Disney.
They didn't start on time, but they definitely had a little bit of a change. Could have been Wall coming in to end the first, settling everything down, so they know, okay, look, we have a lot of time, we can get back in this. But they come out and they start playing. Like, you had what was it? The Klingberg penalty. Like, there wasn't too many penalties in the second there.
I thought he
Klingberg
deserved a penalty, but it was a little suspect. I don't know.
He was borderline getting more than two there. Like, that was kind of...
If you watch it again, Klingberg, he kind of turned his body and his shoulder just naturally, because he was bigger than, who was that, Hagel? Yep. It naturally just went into his face. Which, it's just like, he's bigger than Hagel, so what are you going to do? How he turned at that moment, Hagel. By the way, I think Tampa knows how to get the calls.
100%.
And so, on the Willie call, you're like, well, he clearly knew he was going to get the call if he fell down there, and he did, and he got the call. So everybody, you could see Keith mouthing dive, like we all were. And they didn't want to get scored on. You could tell they were like, we're not getting scored on here. There's no way. And
no, absolutely. And like, in all fairness to Gio, we've been kind of calling him out the last couple games that he's been showing his age, but a game like tonight, like, I'm not saying he was the first star of the game or anything, but you talked about the block shots he had. He had a couple nice passes in the offensive zone. Like, as a team, when you see, I don't want to say your worst player, but when you see one of your players who isn't in the top five, battling and competing, doing literally everything, blocking shots, getting into the ozone, making the offensive plays, it's like, God damn, if he can do that, why can't I?
Yeah, he had a good game. He wasn't noticeable at all, which means he had a good game. He had a couple of nice little nifty passes. He kind of had, that massive block. He was on the penalty kill. I'm conflicted with Gio, because everybody knows he shouldn't play 82 games, and you probably shouldn't go into the playoffs with him on your team. So the move is probably for Trey to upgrade the defense. One big move instead of 5 small moves like we did last year. I don't know what the move is, but that's my opinion. But Gio should be the 7th D probably. I just don't. But I think that you see a guy do that, you get some confidence in net, and then the puck starts to kind of move a little bit. And I thought the Leafs were kind of behind the play a lot in the offensive zone. I saw that a lot where I'm like, why is he ahead of the play? He should be behind the play. Tavares was always ahead of the play. Marner's classic Marner, always ahead of the play. Even, to a certain degree, Nylander in the third. But I like that, I like that Keefe said something's going on with Max. I think he's going to score something tonight. Something's going to happen with him. I think he is the unsung hero tonight, Max Domi, because you could tell he was gripping the stick. He's like, I'm not contributing. I was on the second line. Now I'm on the third line. Am I going to be on the fourth line next? So it was nice to see him get those 2 assists, because they were pretty brilliant passes, right, in the third.
Yeah. Oh, and we can go straight to that. So start the third. Wall starts off with almost right away with that huge save off Point. Point got a breakaway. Mm-hmm. And yet again, just reassuring, guys, I got you. We can do this. Come on. And then Domi it's like Ty called him up or went into the dressing room and gave him a slap in intermission or something and just said, skate. Because all of a sudden, Max just kept his feet moving. All skating up the entire boards. He had Cirelli right on him. Cirelli's a good skater. And he just kept his feet moving, kept going, did not stop moving his feet. And that leads to the first regular season goal of Matthew Knies' career. Beautiful shot.
It was
just
great.
A snipe.
That first goal was killer. It was actually a lot like the Kucherov goal. I thought that Knies, you know he's going to break out eventually. And so that first goal, I'm like, that's the kind of player we've got. secondary scoring has been a problem up until this point, and then he gets the first one, and I'm like, okay, well, this is a game now at least.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that seemed to kind of wake everybody up. Continued trading a couple chances, and then lo and behold, Domi and Nyes again.
Yeah.
Just this time on the opposite wings, right? This time Domi skating down the close side, and he just does a nice little floating backhander. Not really the greatest pass. I think the defenseman deflected it before it got to Nyes. Nyes is able to catch it with his skate, drop to one knee, and just roof it past Johansson to tie the game.
Yeah, it was great. You knew that the only way you're going to score against that goalie tonight was getting it up on his blocker, or exactly where he scored. And he got him, and it was great. I thought the pass from Max was just beautiful. I'm like, because he had a shot. I'm like, is he going to shoot? And he doesn't shoot. He goes for the pass because he knows that Nyes has a better shot than him. And I don't know, it was a good read. And then with about a minute left, because I think Keefe was thinking, oh, we've got the momentum, we could score. So he kind of double shift Matthews and Marner for a bit with Willie. And then they had a couple chances. It didn't seem to go. And then he puts Domi out with a minute left, the Domi line. So I'm like, you probably don't do that in game 1 and 2, but how he felt about the line tonight, he said, okay, something's going with line 3, let's try it. At least they'll save the game and keep it tied, which they did. So they got the point. I was like, oh, cool, we got the point. We'll probably lose in the overtime, but we got the point. Because that's the Leafs, right? I saw PTSD from all the times we would always lose in overtime. We lost so many times in a shootout in the olden days.
That being said, 4 straight OT wins in Tampa for the Leafs, dating back to the playoffs.
Yeah, and because we won in Montreal in overtime, and then we won. Didn't we lose to? No, we won in Montreal, and now we won in Tampa in overtime. So our 3-on-3 game, I think, is solid right now. And it was nice to see Johnny get the goal, of course.
Yeah, well, and there was some question with that too. They had to slow it down frame by frame to see if he actually touched it.
Did he get it in the end?
Yeah, he did. So it deflected off the defenseman's stick, and then Johnny was still swinging at it, and it kind of, you could see it change like the rotation of the puck as it was fluttering in. You could see it kind of change before it went in.
Because, of course, my thesis on the Leafs is that Tavares is underrated, as you know, and so that's his 8th point in 5 games for the captain of the Leafs. Not bad.
He has been incredible to come to your childhood team later in your career. Not that he's old, not that he's past it, but he definitely wasn't, entering his prime when he signed with us. But he is like 3-4 points away from being a point a game player as a Maple Leaf. Like, just incredible. And he's not even your number 1 center taking all the high danger or high chance minutes. Like, most of the prime minutes go to Matthews.
Yeah, Tavares is a really quiet sort of leader, and when he's on the ice, you sometimes are like, oh yeah, there's John. Oh well, I guess the puck's going to die on his stick. But tonight he actually looked pretty good, and he's looked pretty good in the first 5 games. I mean, tonight he gets the game winner, so kudos to him. I think he's a solid second line center. I don't imagine. I think any team in the league would love to have John Tavares as their second line center. So we're lucky to have him, and yeah, he's Mr. Consistent, man. Super consistent in the bright lights of Toronto. All the pressure's on that guy, and it doesn't seem to faze him. I think he's the perfect choice for captain. Looking back, in the end.
Oh, he definitely is. Like, you look at his whole career coming up. Like, the kid was identified at like 11 years old as being, not necessarily generational, but as being an incredible player.
First ever exceptional status in the OHL.
No, exactly. So he's always had that pressure. He still played in the Greater Toronto area with the Oshawa Generals. I know he had the stint with London towards the end of his OHL career, but majority of his OHL career was in Oshawa, which is just outside of Toronto.
I know where Oshawa is, okay?
Well, we got some listeners who might do that.
Okay, I thought you were just suggesting I don't know where the schwa is. Steph will be so mad.
I don't know. You've been spending a lot of time out on the West Coast there. You West Coast boys can be a little different.
I've spent more time in Oshawa than I think many people would ever want to.
Or at least want to admit.
Yeah, both. Yeah.
But no, like the overtime, it was great. We've had a lot of good chances in the overtime periods that we've played so far this year, and Matthews, Marner, like we haven't had the stereotypical Leafs win the faceoff, get a chance, go the other way, and get scored on, right? So we controlled the play for almost the entire overtime until Johansson covered it up, and we had to do that other faceoff.
Yeah, well, I love the start of OT with the Fogo face-off get-off. I think that's kind of what was really working at the back half of last season, and I think I'm glad to see Keith go to Camp, because Camp, I think, is the ideal Fogo, right? Because he can skate.
Oh, yeah.
He can skate, so if he loses it, he just goes back, and they try to get the puck back. You know, he's Davy Boy Camp. He hasn't really had. He's had a pretty quiet start to the season, but he's an underrated weapon for the team. And hey, full marks to him being the third line center tonight. Which I can't really comment on Holmberg. I thought he had some moments, but I that fourth line, I still don't know what to think. Like Gregor had a couple shots, but yeah, I liked how they won the faceoff in overtime, and then they just turned the heat on the whole time. Matthews has that. I thought he scored. I was like, oh, that he walks the defenseman, and then I'm like, oh, he burns him. I was standing up. I'm like, we won, and I'm like, how did he miss that? But he, the goalie bobbled it, or bobbled him, or whatever, deked him out, or whatever happened.
Yep.
But yeah, the outcome was great. I mean, Tavares scoring late in the overtime period was nice. Do you have any notes on that goal?
On JT's goal?
Yeah.
Well, like we were pressuring like crazy. Like you said, we had, like named the player and they had a chance, it felt like, for the Leafs during that overtime. Like Klingberg had a shot. Even Riley was skating up there. Like everybody was flying around. And Willie again. Like he has been so dangerous. He is throwing other teams' defense for such a loop every time he comes in. So to come in off that wall like that and to just get the puck to the net, like old school hockey, right? Get it to the net and see what happens.
Totally. And you mentioned Klingberg. I have to comment. You know, I read a lot of stuff, negative stuff about Klingberg on Twitter, obviously on social media. But there's this weird element of chaos that he brings that I haven't seen the Leafs kind of have that element, and so he can get the puck on the net from the blue line, which is, I mean, we had that with Phaneuf, I guess, or Brian McCabe way back in the zeros, but he's on the power play. I understand why he's on the first power play, because he really does bring this weird element on the right side. He can get it on net and chaos occurs. There wasn't nothing converted with him making those plays in this game, but there was a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, I see the benefit of having a guy who can do that, get the puck on the net, a really nice chance, and then the rebound causes some chaos in front of the goalie. And I thought Klingberg in overtime, there was a moment where he, I don't know who it was on Tampa, but he kind of had to deke him a little bit. And I'm like, if it had been, Liljegren or, I don't know, Brody, or he probably would have lost that one-on-one battle. But Klingberg can skate, dude, and he can handle the puck. I kind of like him. He's not perfect. He's flawed, but I like him. He's not Tyson Barrie, and he's got a little bit more than that. He's more poise. Yeah, he reminds me of kind of like an old defenseman of the Vancouver Canucks, Ed Jovanovski, a little bit. Really like
JovoCop.
Really big. Not as much of a, like, Jovo was famous for his hits, but what he was famous for in Vancouver was also poise on the blue line and a big shot. And I kind of think that Klingberg has a couple of those elements, so I like him.
Tonight was definitely more of what you sign a player like Klingberg for. Like, a lot of people forget that he was kind of a big deal for the Stars,
Oh yeah.
right? If it wasn't for the emergence of Heiskanen, then Klingberg would have been a star for his entire career. So they just lucked out with the. I don't want to say lucked out. That's not really fair to Heiskanen, but Heiskanen turned out to be what they thought he was when they drafted him. So
Yeah.
that enabled them to move on from Klingberg. Now,
Well, Klingberg shot himself in the foot, if we're honest. I mean, he didn't take the deal. He was offered 7 times 7, and he said, "No, I'm worth more." And then he kind of screwed himself in the end, which, that's his people, his agent telling him, "Well, you can get more," and then, failing. But I mean, I'm happy to have him this season, see where it goes, at least now.
no, absolutely. Like, Steph had joked last episode that, it seemed like every time he took a shot, it hit shin pads. And you're going to have that with a high volume shot taker from the point. But I think it's also with him getting more familiar with the team, where everybody's going to be. His skating is definitely an asset of his, like you said. And
I think he's pretty close to Riley. Riley is an incredible north-south skater. Everybody talks about his lateral movement, but I think that Klingberg is almost as good as Riley as far as his skating is concerned. You know what? You have to give the Leafs defense credit. All of them. Gio, I will leave him off this point I'm going to make, but all 5 defensemen for the Leafs are very, very elite skaters, in my opinion. They're above average. They're not like the best. They're not like, I don't know, Hughes or Makar, but they're all just above average.
But they're not Bogosian out there.
Yeah, not like Luke Shen, which I love Luke Shen, and I love that style. Everybody cheers for the 5th or 6th or 7th defenseman, the big dude who just hits and fights, but the Leafs are obviously have a very, very mobile defense, and it's not clicking yet because those goals in the first period. But and against Florida, but I feel like, if they can start, really digging into this system, I think that they could put something together, strong, next 10 games and see where it goes.
Well, they definitely can. And then I've brought it up a couple times too that there's also that wild card that Connor Timmins is hurt. Like, Timmins had a great preseason. The kid came up from juniors as a highly touted prospect, and he's had some injury problems, so he's been bouncing around. Like, Timmins gets healthy, and there's that relief for Gio. You can start subbing guys in and out. Like, Lily's looked a little shaky now and then. I love Liljegren, but he's had some hiccups. So whether it's Lily, Timmins, Gio, kind of sub those guys through to kind of knock down everybody's minutes, get everybody playing, everybody feeling good, I think it could be really beneficial, because everybody knows come playoff time, you need more than just 6 defensemen.
Listen, I'm not going to play the red team because you're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong at all, but I will say one problem with that strategy is that the Gary Bettman's failed hard cap. I don't know if Connor Timmins fits on this team, to be honest. I think the numbers, it's a squeeze game. I don't think there's room for him. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at it. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that if he comes off of LTIR, I think they have to waive some people or send some people down, and I think they're putting that decision off right now. I think that it was interesting to bring up Holmberg tonight and then sit Minton so they could delay that decision on Minton. Because I liked Minton against Florida. I thought he had a good game. So it was the right move to sit him, though, because they lost the game, so you have to sit the rookie. It's the move. It's the right move. But, yeah, I don't know. Trey's got some big decisions that are pending, and none of us know what's going to happen. But I think we could all agree, even Roscoe would agree, that the move at the deadline this season is a defenseman. I think that's the move. I don't know who goes out, but it is the move. And I think you got to give to get. So it might be Lily.
We actually touched on that a little bit last episode with some questions, which we have some tonight we're going to dig into a little bit. And Roscoe is definitely on board with that idea. The rumor, there's been a lot of talk that Trey Living is always like Parayko. Now, I would love to get Parayko. I've always loved the guy, but I don't I would be so nervous about what we would have to give up to get him, to the point of I don't know if I want to go down that road mid-season.
I think you're giving up Niemela now. I don't see him on this team. He's a really, really good prospect, but he's probably the number 3 prospect in the organization, after Minton and Cowan, because Nyes isn't a prospect anymore.
No,
I think you're probably giving up Niemela and a first, maybe a Timmins, like those kind of high upside players for Parayko. I don't know what St. Louis wants though. Like it's really hard to tell, because the one thing with a clean slate season, like you look at Arizona, they had a good start. You look at Philly, they've had a good start. So nobody wants to lose. Nobody wants to tank. Even San Jose's won a few games. So like nobody's wanting to lose right now. And so we can't just assume it's going to be a player on X team that comes to Toronto, because you never know with us. We could, we squeaked a win out tonight, but man, against Florida, we looked like shite, right? So who knows what our season's going to be like. I want us to, win the East, but what happens if we're wild card 2? Then we're probably not talking about going all in on a big D like Parayko. Maybe. But he's flawed too. A lot of people in St. Louis talk about how he's not really a defensive. His defense is sus. And I don't know. Do we need another strong PMD? I think, if we're going for that kind of player, I like Matt Dumba better because he's got the big hits. And I think he's amazing. I've always been a fan of Dumba. Or maybe Nashville's they're tanking down for a lottery pick and they trade Yossi. Now that would be an interesting trade.
Oh, Marty with the hot takes here. I could be in for that. I don't know how in the world they would make that work with the cap, but I could definitely be in for that.
Or like a little softer of a move, but still all in is like Werenski and Columbus, but like, somebody like those kind of players, or maybe Soucy in Vancouver. I don't know if he got 2 years or 1. I can't remember, but he's a really good defenseman too. That'd be a softer move. Like instead of like all your chips in for a bigger player. I would love to see us go even more. This is a crazy trade. But I'm going to tell you because every Torontonian, every like old school Leafs fan wants Drew Doughty. You can't tell me they don't. Even now, he's washed. He's over the hill. But I would love to see Drew Doughty on the Leafs. He'd be awesome in the second pairing.
I've never been a big Doughty fan, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Everybody hates the guy. But if he plays for your team, you're a fan, right? It's like Ryan O'Reilly. You hate that guy. But if he's on your team, you love him, right? So,
well, Doughty for me even goes back to his days with the Guelph Storm, because I'm a London Knights fan. So he's been terrorizing me for a long time.
But like those kind of moves where you're not going like you're going all in at the deadline for a defenseman, but the element that the defenseman brings is different than what we've got. Because I think, the Luke Shen move was the right move, like that kind of player, but maybe more talent, I guess. I don't know what Parayko brings, so I can't really speak to him. I'm not super knowledgeable on him as a player. I just know he's great, and St. Louis won a cup with him, so the Leafs are always going to go after St. Louis players, right? And St. Louis and Toronto have a long history of trades. So
they do, and it's about time that we start winning some. I've never forgiven them for taking Steen from us.
Yeah, that was not like you and I's fault. That was Cliff Fletcher's fault. So
no, I know. I loved Steen. That's going down a rabbit hole, but I miss having him on the Leafs. He was an incredible player, and clearly was. He was a vital part of that St. Louis Cup winning team.
That was one of the worst trades in Leafs history, and there's been tons of bad trades.
There has been tons.
That's a top 5 worst ever.
So let's get to some questions from tonight. So we've got a couple questions to our beloved fanalist. Mike the Fanatic shared a screenshot of a tweet he made back in March with his prediction season hashtag that Joseph Wall is that guy. I think you're on board with that, Marty. And he's asking, how much do we all love Wall? Well, we've kind of gushed about him a little bit tonight already. Do you want to add anything else?
I don't want to walk it all back, but I will say he had a great game. And he seems to be that quiet goalie who can make the save when you need it. And, against Florida, I think he was great. Like he was not the reason Toronto lost that series. He was really, really good. He was really solid. And if he just continues on from tonight, who did he played in game 3 against, who did he play against? And we lost game 3 against
Chicago.
Thank you. He wasn't the reason we lost that game. He was solid. I think it was all special teams that we lost that game. But yeah, Wall, he is the goalie, probably the goalie of the future, but he's probably not a 1A, a true like stud. I think you know what I'm going to say. I think we've got our Vasilevsky in Russia right now.
Pexa looks good.
Not him.
Or are you talking Oktyaamov? You're talking Oktyaamov.
He looks insane. He's standing on his head. Although he kind of blew it in overtime the other night, but he looks amazing. His save percentage is like .948. It's insane. He's become an insane prospect, and it's really intriguing to me. Because he's a big dude too. I think he's 6'4". So yeah. Joe Wall, I think, gets us to that guy. I think kind of like who was the Tampa goalie? Bishop. Kind of like a Ben Bishop, Vasilevsky thing. I think we're going to have a really good problem down the road, which is we have too many really elite goalies. And that's something Toronto's never had.
Well, they have. They just didn't utilize them, because if you look at all the different Hall of Fame goalies that have at one point or their career played for the Leafs, like in the late 60s, early 70s, Bernie Perrott, Cheevers.
Paul Materia. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we had great goalies. We developed great goalies, but it was before I was born, and I'm...
Well, you're older than me,
old.
so...
I'm old, and I could be Roscoe's dad, but that's how old I am. But that's how long it's been since we had a pipeline of goalies that were any good, So...
Yeah.
Next question.
Benito the Basset Hound says, well, let me tell you something. That OT showed all the confidence that this team should have from the start. If they can play like that every game, they don't lose. Well,
I don't think they played with confidence. I think they played with F Tampa. They're like, we do not want to lose this game. I thought that was great. I mean, Mo made that play in overtime where he skated through everyone and got the shot on net. I'm like, they do not like this team. They do not want to lose to them. And I wouldn't call it I'd call it resolve and resiliency, which they showed against Montreal. I thought against Montreal, they had an element that I hadn't seen from this team in decades, which is, you go down and you're like, no, we're going to come back. We go down, we come back. It's like this resiliency. And then when they come back, they step on the team's throats. Because in the overtime, they stepped on Tampa's throat. They said, this is our game. We're not losing tonight. And yeah, he's right, but it's not confidence. It's more like another snarl or something. They're like, we're not losing. We're not effing losing tonight. That's not confidence. That's pure anger, cockiness, strength, resiliency.
I think resolve would probably be the best way to word that.
Totally. Maybe
a little better than confidence. I can't really add anything to that you haven't already said.
Good.
Wayne at Wayne Warren 71 asks, where do you think their main focus should be moving forwards in regards to upgrades? Well, we've kind of already talked about that. A defenseman upgrade.
It's true, but that's long term. I think the thing with Toronto is, getting a guy like Max to click, getting Nyes going, figuring out, is it going to be Fraser Minton as the 3C, or is it going to be Holmberg as the 4C with Davy Boy Camp? just getting these things clicked, like getting Bert going. Like, I don't think there's a move coming. I just think that it's getting these guys to click together, to mesh together, and get on a roll, win 4, 5, 6, 7 games in a row. Like, not really solid, 4-2s, 5-1s, 3-0s, some solid wins in a row. So just clicking and then getting on a roll. That's kind of what you want to see next from this team. I don't know if it's going to happen on this road trip, but that's what I kind of want. And we have to remember it's still October hockey.
That's the thing I was just going to mention there. That historically, for some reason, this iteration of the Leafs has always been kind of trash in October, and then they just flick a switch come the month of November and they light it up and go back to where they're supposed to be in the standings, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have to remember that there's a reason why certain teams do really well in October and November, and it's usually teams with a younger roster, because those players are playing through the summer, they're playing rookie tournaments, they're going into development camps. Whereas Mitch Marner got married this summer. I would be willing to bet Mitch didn't touch his skates until training camp. And Gio definitely didn't skate. So I think that's part of why Toronto starts slow in October. Certainly last year, and then of course this year's. A lot of their players are vets now, and like Willie, Matthews, Marner, and Mo. Like, none of those players really train in the off season on ice, so I think they're just getting the rust off still.
No, that's really well said. And you have to also remember that there was a lot of turnover for the Leafs. Like, yes, the core is still there, but we have a lot of players coming in that weren't here last year, getting used to the way Keefe does things. Like, everything's going to be different, so you got to kind of take everything with a grain of salt sometimes, right? So games like this are definitely something that you can build on. Even though it had the horrible start, they showed the resolve, they came back, and when it mattered, like you said, they weren't letting Tampa win. Like, they put their foot down. That was that. This is how it's going to go, and you just need to sit down and take it.
Yeah, exactly. And, one thing I'll say on this topic, I did notice a lot of, like, small mistakes. Just need to clean some of this stuff up. I know, I mean, I watch hockey. I watch tons and tons of hockey, so I can't really describe to you where F2 should be. But those little, like, tweaks where you're like, okay, F2 needs to be in the right position, and we need the right guy going back at the right time. Like, Lily made a couple passes to nobody in the second, as did I think it was Klingberg actually made a pass to nobody on the right side, and that's just because the positioning and systems. These players don't know what's going on. And Max did the same thing. So I think it's going to start clicking. It's just going to take some time. They need to get home and get back to practice, and then watch some video. And these are humans, right? So they're not they're not robots. You can't just dump the information into their brain and expect them to just go. This isn't NHL 24 EA Sports. This is like, these are real people, and their kids too. A lot of the time.
Yes and no. So yes, they're real people, so you have all the off-ice factors that can definitely affect it, especially when you have new guys coming in. Like, Klingberg's moving across the country. I'm not sure his family situation, but he's been in the league for a while, so I imagine he has wife, kids. So that's a big step. But then, and I love listening to him talk, whether it's on SiriusXM, whether it's on broadcast. Mike Johnson, I think, is an all-star when it comes to hockey commentary. And he said the other day, like, yes, different systems, different coaches, stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's hockey. There's only so many things you can change. So it's
true. Listen,
I agree with what you're saying.
I love Mike Johnson, and I agree with that to a point. Like, I agree with it to a point. And the point I agree with it to is, yeah, it's, quote, just hockey, but it's just hockey in 2023, where every single piece of analytics is now analyzed, and the video is analyzed so much now that your opponent knows exactly, like Cooper showed in the first period, exactly what strategy to use against the Leafs. And they were basically pressing on the forwards really hard to cough the puck up so they could win the battles low. And, that strategy worked, and they got the calls and then they got the goals. So, I agree with Mike Johnson. And by the way, I nearly cried when he was traded for Darcy Tucker, but that worked out actually in our favor. One trade that worked. So I'm a big fan, but when you come into camp for football, the book of plays you got to learn is this big, right? The new QB's got to learn this. He's been given the book months in advance because you got to learn the whole thing. And
Yep.
it's there's a lot of that kind of stuff going on in hockey too now, and you can't minimize it. So yeah, a pro like Klingberg, who has kind of seen it all, knows under pressure, he kind of knows what the best move is. He's not going for, is this a 50-50 play? Like, he's not thinking that. He's just naturally making a move that has worked in the past. So yeah, I partially agree, but I partially disagree with Mike Johnson.
Question from Discord. Scott asks, and you touched on this earlier, and you were just talking about John Cooper. Cooper won the first period. Definitely, he outcoached Keefe. Scott says Keefe's line changing during the game won tonight. Were there any new line combinations you'd want to stay permanent?
No, because I actually like what he does. Like, there was Klingberg came on with Riley. Saw that late in the game. I saw, Max was going all over the place. There was a moment when Gregor was on the first line. Keefe was up to his usual tricks, which is just try some stuff and see what happens. But I didn't see anything where I'm like, that has to stay. A lot of people talk about Willie being with Austin, but Mitch and Austin, those are your top players. Together, they need to be together. They just really worked well together, and that's proven. So, I'm still thinking Willie's probably going to be the third line center by the end of the season. Sorry, guys.
I'm not saying he can't run his line as a centerman, but he has been showing us what we've wanted from him this season. He's been showing us exactly what we've wanted from him right from the get-go by being able to dominate his offensive zone time, and he's doing that from the wing. So if you had the extra responsibility of center, that might, I'm not saying it will, it might take away some of that. So I still don't mind him being wing.
Well, maybe
we do need,
you're right. Don't break up a good thing, but if they could put Patrick Laine at center, which sadly doesn't look like it's going to work, Willie can definitely be a centerman. But
oh yeah, Willie's definitely got more of a defensive game to be center than Laine would. Kind of tying into that same thing, Benito the Basset Hound, and what he says is a shit question. Does this unlock the Domi Nyes combination for some depth scoring?
I hope so, but who's is Camp the centerman? Is he the perfect centerman because he's so defensive? He's not even in the offensive zone when both of those goals go in? Like, maybe.
I think that's not a bad way to look at it because, like, as much as people crap on Camp for how defensive he is, like everybody says, oh, you're paying him too much for what he brings. But no, that's what they needed.
You could argue they win the game because of his intangibles, his little small things. Like, he wins the face-off in overtime. He's on the ice for that first goal, the Nyes goal. He got a point on that goal. You have to give him credit that he gets slotted into the third seat and he has a solid game. I don't think he was amazing in the first period, but I don't think anybody really was. So you have to give him credit that he took an opportunity and it worked out, and Keefe ran that line. I think he's like, oh, maybe we have something with this. So yeah, I see the point. And then, it's funny, Domi took a face-off in the overtime and he lost it in the offensive zone, but then they won the puck back against Tampa, so it kind of worked out. But I think that, there's a lot of tweaking that's going to go on between now and April. And, in October last year, I think we still had old, what's his name? Who's the kid we had that Kyle Dubas loves, Mulligan. So we had him on the team. So, I don't know. Matt Murray was our starter, by the end of the year he was gone. So I don't know, like who knows what's going to happen between now and April, but I think there's some stuff like even Nick Robertson has 5 points in 2 games and then he plays tomorrow or tonight. And like, who knows what that looks like. So there is some stuff that's going to happen and we're going to, our roster will probably make more sense by the end of November, American Thanksgiving. We'll see.
Definitely. And I don't know why, but that's always kind of been the benchmark for whether or not you're going to have a successful season is how your team's doing and where they are by American Thanksgiving.
Well, because if you're in the playoffs by American Thanksgiving, the probability of not being in the playoffs is like 10%. So,
unless you're Buffalo.
Yeah.
Lucas Hainsworth, how you doing, buddy? We haven't talked in a while. I need to message you. Is being the Leafs captain the hardest way to make an easy living?
I don't get it.
Well, because the goal, right? No, just I think he's just kind of a little tongue in cheek there.
Yeah, no, we've talked about
JT
is people forget he's even on the team. I certainly do. I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot we have one of maybe the greatest OHL draftees of all time. He's so underrated. I even underrate him, and I'm constantly talking about how underrated he is. He's a quiet leader. He's a community leader. People on the team look up to him. He will drop the gloves. He's gritty. He's got lots of skill in tight. The guy can stick out in a phone booth. He can't skate worth shite though. But I love JT. I love him, and I'm glad to see that he continues to rack up the points. So, what are you going to do?
No, completely agree. I want to ask you a question, and then we'll get to our last question, and we can wrap this up. What are your thoughts on Mr. 75, Mr. Reeves there so far this season? I know it's early.
It's an arms race in the NHL. If you have Ryan Reeves on your bench, you know that the other team isn't going to play funny business. And that happened to us a lot last season where, people won't fight Simmons, and Simmons, is more of they were trying to keep him more of like a sniper. So he wasn't a true enforcer, and he's so well respected. Nobody wanted to fight him. And then, so when things got a little weird, he ended up not even playing because they're like, well, first of all, he can't play that way anyway. Like he can't play as a sniper anymore. And on top of it, nobody wants to fight him. So what's the point of playing a guy we're not going to play? Like keep him off the bench. So I think one thing I'll say about Reeves is maybe he had 8 minutes tonight, if that, but he played some solid north-south hockey. They won the zone a couple times with him on the ice, and then he got off, but guess what didn't happen? Nobody got Bogo didn't go crazy. Tanner Jeannot didn't go crazy because they know they have to pay the price now. And teams they'll have to think, if we can't screw around with this team because we'll have to pay the price. And it does, I grew up with old school hockey, as did you. And if you have Ty Domi on the bench and Bob Probert's on the other bench, they're going to fight. But as soon as they fight, that pressure's gone, right? So I think that you still need that guy on your bench, man. It's like an arms race. You have to. It sucks because I don't think Reeves, he seems like a great personality, a great room guy, glue guy, personality. He takes the spotlight away from Matthews and Marner, which is perfect. That's what they need. He takes up a lot of oxygen of reporters. They love talking to the guy. I think he's perfect for this team. I just think that, by game 82, will he be playing every game? I don't know. And will he be in the playoffs? I think he actually will be in the playoffs. I think he's our weapon in the playoffs that is maybe even, dare I say it, our secret weapon.
Interesting.
Because the BS that went on with the Lightning and Corey Perry in the first round, if we had Ryan Reeves, that stuff all goes away. By game 2, it's gone. Now, we had Luke Shen, so that that's I think the reason we won that Tampa series. But Yeah, with Revo, he brings a different element because I don't think players want to fight that guy, and he backs it up, right? He's a rat and an enforcer. He's a heavyweight, so I don't know. I like it right now.
I've been kind of on the fence with it the whole time. Like initially, I did not like the signing. I figured that with the cap space that they did not have, they didn't need to be spending any of it on Reeves. He has won me over a little bit, and I mentioned a couple episodes ago, like as long as it's not an issue with regards to utilization, and
It hasn't been
I've
so
touched
far,
on
right?
a couple times. No, it hasn't, and I've touched a couple times. Maybe in the past, maybe that had something to do with Dubas. Maybe Keefe has kind of been given the reins to do what he actually wants without any interference from up top. Because as you said with Simmons, they were still trying to use him like he was the power play specialist he was when he was in Philadelphia, which he wasn't at that point of his career when he was with the Leafs, right?
The thing with Simmons that sucks is he broke his arm or hand or wrist like 20 games into his first contract. But before he broke the wrist, he actually had 10 goals. He was, and he looked like he had kind of recovered from previous injuries, and he was being used appropriately. He was on the third line, but then on PP2 or something. So, the whole Wayne thing is, I love Wayne Simmons so much, and I was so happy to see him play for the blue and white, but I think Ryan is a different player because they don't expect him to do any of that stuff. All he is a weapon. They're just keeping in the closet and pointing to it anytime there's trouble, So I think that is kind of why they have him. And you know what? Tonight it didn't go. There was no funny business. If the Leafs, if it got into 5-1, I think there would have been funny business caused by Ryan Reeves, but it didn't. That didn't happen. So.
No, I agree, and we need to make sure that it doesn't get to the point where he's costing us. Like if like you said, if they don't have to point to him for that game, get on the ice. You're basically there at that point to give all your other guys rest. Get on the ice, do your shift. Up down the ice, whatever you have to do. Just don't be a negative while you're out there. And so far, it's looked like he's been able to do that. He's brought energy when he needs to wake the team up or to give that jolt. He's been that deterrent. And I think
one thing I will say, so this is 5 games, so there's going to be a lot of 5-game sets in this season. But I will say the game against Chicago, the Corey Perry Reeves thing did end up costing them a goal. So I guess what I will say is you might lose a game here and there because of him. But when we get to the playoffs, I think we'll see the true value. I think he has the most playoff games. He's played the most playoff games for active players in the NHL. And that is something that speaks for itself right there to me. He knows playoff hockey.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's like number one. Maybe there's a Tampa player that's ahead of him, but he's like number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in number of playoff games played. So, yeah, we got to give him a chance. I think this style will work for us, but it's early.
That it is. And I can get to one of our last questions there from Offside Hockey Talk.
James,
Can Leafs Nation calm down? Asking for a friend.
So, it's crazy. This season, after a pretty fun and intense season last year, I found it like getting back into the routine of watching hockey and I don't really have, I've talked about this with you before. I don't really there's no emotion for me with hockey really. It's just observe and report, right? You observe and then talk about what happened. But I have to admit, I was out of my seat tonight after that goal winning the game. So the passion still unites us, and I can't settle down, James. I can't settle down. It's in my blood now. My blood is blue and white.
That is one thing that I think I don't know if there's a Leaf fan out there who knows what settle down means or calm down. My wife almost refuses to watch games with me anymore because she feels like I'm going to have a heart attack. When this era of Leafs first made the playoffs, she was sitting beside me on the couch, and Kapanen had that OT winner against Washington, and she said she has never been more scared for my life with how stressed and all the emotion and energy I was giving off.
Oh,
Like
man.
that Boyle little backhand pass to Kapanen to bury it for the win. Like
There were a couple.
so she doesn't.
I can relate to your wife. There was a couple of moments, or relate to you. There's a couple of moments against Tampa in that first round where I was, when they scored, like the game winner, even when they were down 3-1. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Don't tell anybody I said this. I was like, "Ah!" and like so much intense emotion all at once that when I finally I stood up, I was like, oh shit, I'm going to pass out. So I think we should all, maybe James is right. We do need to calm down, but people don't understand. Like, okay, so I've been watching have you seen the Beckham doc on Netflix? Did you start that?
I stayed up until like 2 a.m. the other night to watch all but the last episode of it because it was actually a hell of a lot better than I thought it was.
It's amazing. And I didn't know a lot about him. So it was great. And I see a lot of parallels with the Man U at that time when he joins the team. They hadn't won since guess what year?
67.
There you go. And then he always wears the 67 shirt. But you know, what was great about his story is he comes to the team and then they start moving forward and start winning. And I think it's a great story. And, you know, the one thing with him is he starts getting distracted a little bit. Was he or wasn't he? And that's kind of where am at in the series. But I really like the story. It's really compelling, but I see parallels with the Leafs and Man U at that time in the 90s. And, you know, we want the team to win.
It's actually funny you say that because when my wife and I started dating, her mom's like moved over here from England as a kid. Her dad moved over here from Portugal when he was younger. So soccer's or football, if you're from that neck of the world, is something that my wife has always been interested in, and I never really was. So when we started dating, I got into it a little bit more and thought, you know what, I need to pick a team. And my reasoning for picking a team was, you know what? They're one of the few teams I actually had heard of. And history-wise, I didn't dig into it at the point. I didn't realize the last time they had won was 67 before their recent success. But I chose Man U because they're a historic team with, you know, a prestigious team that everybody knows about and that has that history that you can be proud of. And then as I've been a Manchester fan, not as diehard as a Leaf fan as I am, but there's definitely more parallels than I care to admit, especially with some of the downturns that they can have.
Yeah, and I'm not super into football, but I've talked about Wrexham on my podcast, and I've talked about, you know, some of the intriguing stuff that's going on in Canada with the Canadian Premier League and the Whitecaps, of course, MLS with Toronto FC and Whitecaps out here, which is maybe a rivalry. I don't even know if they are. So it is cool to follow soccer as it's known, and get more interested in it and finding out about the Premiership and how that works. And Wrexham, that of course is what drew me in. But yeah, I will say that the passion of people in a town like Wrexham for a team that really has never been successful, to be honest, and they're one of the oldest teams in the entire Premiership. Like, that's what true passion is. And that's what is in our blood, yours and mine. You know, that's what we all share being fans of the Leafs, is that it's a shared interest. And we're going to follow them whether they win or lose. You know, when they finished last, that was the year I still watched 40 or 45 games. I don't know why, but I did, and it was great. It was fun watching them tank. It's like, oh, this is great.
I have, like, for me to actually miss a game, I've either still got to be working or, like, the power's out. Like, and even if I'm working, normally I'm listening to it on the radio. Like, I watch damn near every single game, and even when they were terrible. And like you said, the passion, like, you live in British Columbia. We have never met face-to-face. Aside from podcasts and the Leafs, we would never have interacted ever.
It's great.
Like, Luke Man's in Australia.
It's amazing.
Like I've had conversations with Victoria over in Scotland. Like the fact that we literally have people in every corner of the globe that can connect about this wonderful bullshit team that we love to hate and hate to love. Like it's awesome.
Yeah, and we all
Passionate.
have the same kind of feeling about it. We want them to win so bad, and they haven't. When they finally do win, maybe there you go, James. Maybe that's when we all can kind of settle down. Because like I don't think Tampa fans are like high strung. I don't think Vegas fans are high strung.
Oh, Vegas fans have nothing to be high strung about. Don't even get me started on them.
I don't know. I don't. I've said it before. I don't know if any Canadian team can win with the commissioner we have, but I do hope that this is our year, and we'll kind of observe and report with less emotion. Than we'll try. We'll try to have less emotion about it. But tonight was fun. It felt good. It felt good to win. That was a really, really good experience. Watching it with my daughter, she watches it with me, and she loves watching the Leafs. And she's always like, "Who has it? Who's that? Who's that? Who's number 11? Who's number 3?" It's great. It's really fun. Where's Mitchie? So,
yep, I'm getting that with Patrick now too. He's before it was, "Hey, Daddy, can I stay up to watch the game?" And it was only just to stay up so he can play with his toys. And now he's actually watching the game, and he's always wondering, well, where's Matthews? Well, why? Who's the goalie? Why are they playing tonight? And it's incredible. Definitely an aspect of the sport I didn't know I needed until I became a dad, right? So
that's what this experience is. I watch hockey with my dad and my some friends, and that's what the sport is. It's a passion that unites us all. We have something in common, and I think that sports can bring people from different backgrounds together, and that's exactly why we're talking, and it's great. I'm really glad that you had me on the podcast.
I'm glad that you were able to come on. Roscoe, enjoy your time off. Southey, Darty, Steph, we love you. We miss you. Yeah, with that, let's end it here.
Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Leafs Late Night, your night of post-game podcast. Available after every game on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and more.
Everyone go check out Marty's podcast. Sports is fun. It should be stopping.